In dark times such as these, we need persons of light to show us the way. The Church has named such persons through the centuries saints. Saints are those who have been lights to the world in their generations and who still have the capacity to penetrate the darkness of our lives and our world through their hope, their faith, and their love. One of my special saints, even though she's not given the title saint, is Dame Julian of Norwich. The 14th century in which Julian lived was a dark period in the world, much like our dark period. England and France were locked in a 100-year war. It seemed never-ending. The Black Plague ravaged Europe, killing up to 200 million people. That's like wiping out the whole United States in the 1960s. Sickness, death, and war, and the anxiety that was attendant to it formed the backdrop of everyone's life. While very ill, Julian experienced what she called showings. These were visions of a greater story and a greater context than the devastation of their times, the story of God's, as she called it, motherly love, available in the particularity of each life. In a time of despair, Julian saw something different. In a time of reactivity, Julian saw a greater context. These showings were so palpable, they were like lived experiences. It was as if her very illness gave her new eyes to see reality. Well, Julian recovered from her illness and wrote down both the showings and her reflections on them through the years. And going back to Blessed Julian this past week in light of the killings of the Tree of Life Synagogue, which seemed to sum up all the violence and the hatred and the separation that surround us, I found that these words of Julian served to lighten my way through this terrible darkness which threatened to overwhelm. And this is what she wrote, which I love so much. When deeds are done which appear so evil to us, and people suffer such terrible evils that it does not seem as though any good will ever come of them, and we consider this, sorrowing and grieving, so that we cannot find peace, you shall see for yourself that all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. Pay attention to this now, faithfully and confidently, and you will see the fullness of joy. And later she writes, for God holds us in his hands and tends to us as a motherly presence. How could she say that? In the midst of all the signs to the contrary, how could Mother Julian say, all will be well and all manner of things will be well? Was she a Pollyanna? Was she a blind optimist? Or did she have a secret that came to her in the midst of the moment when her own life was ebbing away? Having gone back to Julian for faith that would lighten my way in the darkness, I sat at my desk on Monday afternoon and I started to write. And I found myself writing a vestry resolution, since we had a vestry meeting last Monday evening and I could therefore not attend the memorial gathering down the street at Temple O.F. Sholem. And as I began to write, I found myself thinking of how much I loved Rabbi Raz and so many folks down the street at O.F. Sholem Temple, and how much I love our blessed rabbi in residence who is teaching us so faithfully, Rabbi Michael Panitz, and how much I love Rabbi Jeff Arnowitz, my colleague and friend over at Temple Bethel here in Ghent, and Cantor Wally, who used to be at O.F. Sholem, and Cantor Wendy, who is at Bethel, and all the Jewish friends and neighbors Kathy and I have known and loved through the years. And rather than filled with darkness, I just found myself overwhelmed with love. And so I wrote the resolution, which you find on the front of your Tower Weekly, and I was so proud when our unbounded, loving vestry joined me in supporting the resolution unanimously that evening, and enthusiastically we sent it off to the synagogues and to the Jewish community. And at the same hour, Monday evening, Mother Sue and Father Jim Sell and many of you gathered at O.F. Sholem Temple down the street to show your love and support by standing together in love and oneness with our brothers and sisters who were traumatized and in pain and frightened. And I was so proud yesterday morning when a group of us from Christ in St. Luke's joined religious leaders and congregants from other traditions in what became known on social media as Show Up for Shabbat. Some of you went to Temple Israel. Some of us went to Temple Bethel. And together, as we gathered as one, we found hope. We found light in the darkness. Rabbi Arnowitz said yesterday at Temple Bethel that never has he and the Jewish community experienced such an outpouring of love and support as they have had this past week. Never. And we stand with them in saying, never again must this ever happen. The voice of Jesus calls us to this. This is our purpose. He calls us as he called Lazarus from the darkness of our lives, from all that entombs us, and the darkness of the world into the light of unbounded love. Calls us out of that darkness and the bindings of hate and separation, of disappointment, of suspicion, of self-righteousness, into what it is to live as an unbounded people of God in whom love flows freely. And it is time to live as that and not let anything bind that love again. Our job is to show that love that Jesus showed us, that Jesus showed Julian and all the saints, and he will do the rest. And at length, you shall see for yourself that all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. And the showings are our showings. We show that love. We live that love. We step out of the fray of separation and come together in holy communion. And when we pay attention to this now, faithfully and confidently, no matter what happens in the world, we shall see the fullness of joy. For joy, as one person once said, is the absolute, unmistakable sign of the presence of God. Pay attention to this now, faithfully and confidently, and you will see the fullness of joy. I dare say all who gathered with friends, all who expressed love to our Jewish friends and brothers and sisters, all of you who carried them in your prayers, have, in the midst of the darkness of this past week, had a taste of that fullness of joy. Amen.